one of the advantages of coming late into the priesthood is that I can tell you about my sinful past and not have any repercussions, because that was all before, priesthood. So that gives me a huge advantage, right? This parable today that Jesus was talking about pretty much sums up my life, because I was those 4 seeds. Well, I'm trying to be the last seed now. But that first seed that he was talking about the one that falls on the ground and then falls on the rocks, and it really can't grow. It just kind of blows away. So pretty much when I graduated, church was an interesting thing growing up, and you've heard some of me say this before, but I just wanted to tie it back to this particular parable. So it was good. I went to church and everything like that, but again, didn't really have a lot of impact, lasting impact at that point. And so basically, I was just ready to go to college and party, which they can't do today. All right, but it was the 70s, and so it was all okay. We could do whatever we wanted. I wasn't listening to any kind of word of God or word of Jesus, so I was that seed. And, and even to the point that, I kind of thought Christianity was a little bit foolish, so kind of took the C.S. Lewis path that just didn't really do anything for me. So let's move on and find something interesting like Buddhism or Taoism, or let's go see what the Mormons are doing. So that exploratory phase. And that's okay. Young people especially need to do that, to see what else lies outside, the walls of the church here. I had to laugh because I remember when my mother, when I was going off to college, and I remember my mother saying, "Παιδάκι μου, ξέρω ότι τώρα πας στη κολέο, και εγώ ξέρω ότι δεν θέλεις να πας τακτικά στην εκκλησία. Αλλά όταν δεν έχουν εκεί Ορθοδόξη εκκλησία, να μην πας καθόλου στη καθολική εκκλησία, αλλά μπορείς μήπως να πας σε ένα προτεστάντη. So my mom tells me, you can go, I know there's not going to be a lot of Orthodox churches where you're going, probably not any, but I don't want you going to a Catholic church, and you could maybe go to a Protestant church. So that kind of gave me my license that I could go and I could explore a little bit. So anyway, it was that seed. That next seed that he talks about is that seed that gets choked by the weeds and the thorns, meaning that I hear it, but I'm too busy having fun that it doesn't really stick. And so that was certainly a time when, I was definitely interested in the car that I had, and did it look fancy enough? And I was enamored with the position that I had in my company, and I was excited about all of those things. You're a military officer, so you're like top of the world. So all of those things, and that was my focus. That's where I was. So I was that seed, because there were people there that were Christians, and there was an Orthodox church there, and I met the priest, but I'm like, I don't really have time for that. Easter, don't worry, I'm coming to Easter. I'll run in at the last minute and get my candle, light it, then I'm out of here. So I'll at least come for that, and maybe on Christmas you'll see me. So I was what they call the CEO, right? The Christmas Easter Orthodox guy. All right. So, and they tried and they worked on me, and and it didn't really work. And then there is that seed now that gets planted in the ground with the good soil. So while after the military and I went to work for GM, I got to go to I was trying to find an Orthodox church, because at that point, Presbytero was saying, okay, look, we gotta kind of get on the straight and narrow here, because, I don't know, the way your life is going, it's going right down the toilet. All right. From a spiritual sense, not from a practical sense, but from a spiritual sense. All right. And so that's when we started to look for, an Orthodox church. And to be fair, a lot of the Orthodox churches weren't that welcoming. They were a little cold. But I did find this one church. And it was that priest there And the people that listen to me on Thursday night, they hear me talk about my spiritual father every single time, because I finally had the opportunity to begin to become the good seed, meaning that he knew how to reach me. And again, I got to repeat the story because it is funny. I go to St. George. St. George was the church. I go to St. George, and I ask the secretary, I'm looking to meet the priest. Again, the priest that I grew up with in Tarpon Springs, was very tall, apparently a northern Greek, because all of us in the southern area of Greece were all about that high, including my mom and my father. All right, so big, tall guy, big yenya down a beard like this, very scary guy. I remember my mom saying, don't bother the priest with questions. He's a very busy man. Don't bother the priest with all the questions you've got. All right? And when I went to St. George, I says, I'd like to meet the priest. So I've got this vision in my mind. So this guy pulls up in a 1973 Harley, the do-rag on his head. And I'm like, so I asked him, I says, trying to be cool. I'm like, hey, what are you doing here? Are you gonna, I don't know why I have a New York accent, but I says, hey, what are you doing here? You come to this church too? And he goes, yeah, kinda. And I says, oh, well, my name is Angelo, this and that. What's your name? He says, oh, I'm Father Nick. And I was just like, this cannot be. There is no priest, Orthodox priest on the face of the planet that rides a motorcycle, number one. Number two, there's no priest, right, that wears a leather jacket. Okay, so this is out. Over the course of the next 8 years, he was the sower. I know that in the story God is the sower, but God's hand worked through him, and he was able to help me relate to the Word, to begin to understand why church is important. And then I started to get it. And so then, slowly by slowly, I became that good seed. Now, somewhere along that 8 years, I don't know how it happened, I ended up going to seminary. And he is a very bonito person, because I was not thinking about it at all, and he saw something in me, and then he went ahead and pursued that, and I ended up getting me into seminary. So the point here is that for those of us that are, not me, but for those of us that are younger, it's not terrible to be those seeds. That's, for some, is the progression of life. I know that there are people that start out as the good seed, and they are the good seed. There are those that start out as the seed that gets blown away, and unfortunately they never come back. But all that it takes is to realize it, to meet somebody who now shines that light of Christ in a way that you understand. Everybody has that person. Everybody can meet that person. I was I don't want to say fortunate, because that's not true. I was God gifted that I was able now to meet that person, and he brought me. Now, the one thing I will tell you, like St. John Climacus says, if you think that you are now the good seed, go back to the bottom rung and start again, because now you've all of a sudden become very prideful. There is a huge amount of work that I still need to do. So my work's never going to be done. If my work standing here is never done, your work is not done either. So again, community and having people around you reminding you that, hey, you're falling off the path and you're becoming that other seed and not that good seed. To remember that this is a life's journey and that God is always there and will be with you. Not just invisibly, but he will also be there present in family, friends, and this community that we have here. And for me, that discovery was not only salvation, I believe, for the kingdom of heaven, but certainly salvation for my physical body here, because as Terry will tell you, I really should be dead 8 or 10 times over. This is why it's a good thing for men to be married, or else we'd all be dead.